Chapter 17. Siobhan. Sunday. I need to find myself another tennis partner. I don't want to play with Dennis anymore, with his big grunty serves and quotes from the Bible. Not to mention his pursed lips whenever I swear. And his legs make me feel queasy, they're so hairless. I can't get over what he said to me today. We were only chatting, as we always do in between sets, and I was just telling him about Alex poisoning Biggles, and how he still hadn't paid me my 300 quid, and that I was really worried that everything going so quiet was a bad sign, that I'd come home one night and there Alex would be, with a carving knife and a roll of duct tape. And Dennis blurted out, "Can't we talk about something else? I mean, what is his problem?" "That's not very Christian of you, is it, Dennis?" I said. "Here am I having a major crisis, with this total nutter stalking me, and you want me to change the subject. Well, I'm awfully sorry if I'm boring you." I thought that would shut him up, and he did say sorry too, but he sort of muttered it, and then got up and slammed half a dozen supersonic serves past me. Then he stopped and marched back up to me. He looked quite angry, it was weird. His eyebrows went almost white, and his face was brick red, with a little ticking muscle in his cheek. I frowned at him. "What? Siobhan," he said. "You have to stop talking about this guy. You had a shock, but that was over a fortnight ago. He's left you alone since then. You've got no evidence that it was him who poisoned your cat. I mean, I'm not sticking up for him or anything, what he did was awful, but you've got to move on. You can't let it mess up your life like this." The cheek of him. I couldn't believe it. I grabbed my racket cover and bag, and headed for the gate, then and there, after we'd only been playing for half an hour. I hate not getting my money's worth on those courts, they aren't cheap, but I had no intention of letting that sanctimonious little prick talk to me like that. "You men," I said over my shoulder. "You're all the bloody same. You make me sick, I thought you were my friend." "I am your friend," he shouted, as I marched back to my car. I ignored him. Loser. So I wasn't in the greatest of moods after that. Maybe it's my hormones. I'm due on any day now. I tried to ring Jess and Paula for a moan, but they were both out, so I left them long messages, which I did feel slightly guilty about. I hate it when people burble for ages on my answer machine, but it's just so tempting to pour your heart out on someone else's. It was a beautiful sunny autumn day, so I decided to walk down to Angelo's and see if I could get a table outside for lunch, doing my usual trick of pretending to be waiting for a friend who doesn't show up, so much less embarrassing than admitting you're lunching alone. I took a notepad and pen, and thought it would be a good opportunity to eavesdrop and make a few character sketches for the novel. Not to mention eyeing up any cute men who might be out and about, maybe a nice rich divorcee taking his little daughter out for lunch, that's what I need. A new boyfriend, to take my mind off Alex. Anyway, I got a perfect table, on the edge of the veranda, and sat there waiting for my Greek salad. I'd told the waiter that I'd go ahead and order, because my friend was always late. There were indeed quite a few tasty men around, including said waiter. Not my usual type, really short and losing his hair, but flirtatious enough to cheer me up. I tried to make eye contact with two guys at a nearby table, but they weren't having any of it. Gate, probably. So, my salad arrived, and I'd had one forkful of feta when suddenly my already bad day got a whole lot worse. I spotted Phil and a girl, presumably Lynn. Phil Lynn. Sounds like something you have done at the dentist. And it was like having teeth pulled, seeing the two of them together. I clocked them from right down the street, arm in arm, nauseatingly lovey-dovey. She was even walking with her head leaning on his shoulder. I hope she got a stiff neck. I quickly put on my shades, and gave my salad some intense scrutiny, but to my horror they stopped. How dare he bring her here? This is where we used to have lunch together. And with me sitting there like Billy no mates. It was too humiliating. They sat down 2 tables away from me, and instantly clasped hands with each other across the table as if they'd been parted for months. I noticed that he was growing a ridiculous little beard thing, like a joke beard, or else something that he'd drawn on with a black felt tip. Prat. I leaned my elbow on the table and hid the side of my face nearest to them in my hand, but it was too late. I saw her look at me, then lean across and say something to him. He jerked his head up and towards me, with a look of such panic in his eyes that I was seriously offended. I mean, for God's sake, is seeing me really so terrifying? Siobhan, he said in my direction, rather croakily, half standing up and then changing his mind and sitting down again. Lynn pressed her lips together in what I assume was intended to be a smile, but it was about as friendly as a tank full of piranhas. Another couple came and sat at the table between us, but I thought, he's not getting away so easily, so I stood up instead and went over to them. Might as well brazen it out, I thought. Hi, I said, holding out my hand to Lynn. I'm Siobhan. Yes, she replied. I know. We met before, remember, at Phil's office. I didn't remember, but whatever. She was eminently forgettable, mousy hair, watery eyes, skinny and weak-looking. Even I, with my not very robust sense of self-esteem, thought I'm much prettier than her. Then I found myself thinking I could take her out, any day. I must really have PMT. So, how are you? Did you have a nice time in Portugal? I chirped through gritted teeth. Lovely thanks, said Phil. Really lovely, added Lynn. Rub it in, why don't you? Phil craned around me to look at the place laid opposite mine. Are you, with anyone? He asked. He seemed really ill at ease. I was glad that I still had an effect on him, glad that he was jealous I'd found a new boyfriend. I temporarily forgot that in fact I hadn't found a new boyfriend at all. Yes, well, he'll be along later. Stuck in traffic, you know how bad the roadworks get around here at weekends. He went to visit his mother last night, you see. Phil looked even more terrified. What a complete pansy. Actually, he said, giving the menu in front of him a nanoscon scrutiny, you know what, Linny? Linny. Puke. I don't think I really fancy any of this. In fact, I've got a bit of a yen for a Chinese. He laughed nervously and said to both of us, yen. For a Chinese. Get it? The yen is Japanese currency. In China it's the yuan, I said, standing over him with my arms folded, and noticing with glee that he had a bit of a bald spot. Oh well. Same continent, he said. Ha ha. Ha ha, I replied. Lynn was shooting daggers at me by now. She stood up. Yeah, I fancy Chinese too, let's walk round the corner to Ho Lin's. Nice to see you again, Siobhan. They started to move away between the tables. Did you get my messages, Phil? I called after them. He half turned. No. I didn't. And then they were gone, not even a word of goodbye. I went and sat down again, with Angelo's horrible wicker chair scratching the backs of my legs, but I'd lost my appetite. My tomatoes looked half-cooked and soggy, and the feta had left an unappetizing white juice all over the plate. It's so odd, how you can be completely intimate with a person, and then they treat you like somebody who once ripped them off in a pub. That man has had his tongue in places that I didn't even know I had, and now he can't even be bothered to say goodbye, let alone return my calls. It's really depressing. I know I don't want to get back together with him or anything, but I can't help but feel jealous of what he obviously has with Lynn. Why can't I find a man who loves me like that? Why didn't Phil love me like that? What's wrong with me? I miss having a boyfriend. I abandoned the rest of my salad, left a tenner on the table, and trudged up the hill back to my empty house. I suddenly felt that even finding Alex there would have been better than coming home to this loneliness. Loneliness, and a credit card bill for £398.80, my new tennis shoes plus the money that Alex stole from me. Which he still hasn't paid back, the bastard. There's no way I'm letting him get away with it. Later. I've been working on the new novel, miraculously. It's the first time in ages I feel that I'm really beginning to get stuck into it. She's not a bad character, this Stevie woman. I'm actually starting to quite like her, whereas at first I actively disliked her. Fear, probably, if I try and analyze it. Fear that she, i.e. my creation, won't be good enough to get me another publishing deal. Although I'm beginning to feel a tiny bit more optimistic about the prospect of future publication, I've just had an email from Patricia. She sounded a little sniffy, and said she'd been trying to get hold of me for a few weeks. Well, she can't have been trying very hard. I get relatively few emails, and would definitely have seen one from her had she, as she claims, sent one before. Why hadn't she phoned? Anyway, the good news was that TLA has, unbelievably, been selling very well in translation in Holland, and the Dutch publishers got in touch with Patricia to ask if I might be interested in coming over for a bit of an event, a reading, and some stock signings. A free trip to Amsterdam might be just what I need to take my mind off all this trauma. I don't know, though. If I had a man to take with me, it would be different. I'd be there like a shot. Amsterdam is such a romantic city, with all those kindly windows and canals. I can see myself in what is the Dutch equivalent of a gondola. Well, in a boat trailing my fingers seductively through the sunlit sparkly water as a beautiful man recites paragraphs of TLA to me. Yes, I like that. He could be a fan. He's learned whole pages of TLA off by heart, and he's lying there with his head in my lap, reciting them. That would be blissful. Then we'd go back to my hotel and I've got sex on the brain at the moment. I was writing a sex scene for Stevie earlier, when Rollo follows her home, lets himself into her house, strips off all his clothes and joins her in the shower. I know showers are rather a cliché, but there is something so damn sexy about being shoved up against a slippery tiled wall, him lifting her with his thrusts as they gasp to try and catch their breath, through the streams of hot water blasting off their bodies. This is pretty sick, though, and God knows what Dennis Tennis would have to say about it, but when I was writing the scene, I accidentally typed Alex's name, when I meant Rollo. Twice. I suppose it was because I was still subconsciously thinking about Alex outside the bathroom door like that, with me naked inside. But if Alex had been a lover, it could have been extremely erotic. So anyway, I haven't decided about Amsterdam. I feel so lethargic at the moment that frankly, I'm not sure that I can be bothered. I mean, a couple of signings and a reading to one bored punter whilst, in all probability, tumbleweeds blow through the empty bookshop. It's hardly going to make a difference, is it? Especially as it's the UK where I want to get another deal. I'll think about it for a while. I've emailed Patricia back to say that I'm not sure how my work commitments are going to pan out over the next few months, and provided there's no urgent rush on a decision, I'll let her know in a week or so. Later still. Feeling down again. Have just been to Sainsbury's, and everywhere I looked there were couples cooing over the angel hair pasta, or planning their next dinner party, or buying nappies. I haven't even got a boyfriend, let alone a husband or baby. And there's been all this stuff in the press lately about how, if you're not married by the time you're 35, then you only have a 13% chance of ever getting married. And worse, if you haven't had your first baby by the age of 38, you only have a 3% chance of conceiving. That's terrifying. I want a baby. Even though I hate other people's babies. I want to be loved. I don't want to be alone. There must be something awful the matter with me. Am I the sort of person who gets less appealing the more you get to know her? I mean, for heaven's sake, 2 weeks ago I had a man who was utterly obsessed by me. How ironic is that, even my stalker has lost interest. Although that's probably because he's having trouble getting the money together to pay me. No, I am so not going to feel sorry for him. I'm having trouble getting the money together to pay my bloody credit card bill. Time is running out for Alex Parkinson, and I'm not going to let this drop. He owes me that money, and I want it back.